This is We Burlesque.
Welcome to WEView, and I am Coco Rose. I will be your moderator today, and we have an amazing group of panelists. First, but not least, we have the reason that we are all here, our burlesque legend, Mickey May, as well as coming from across the pond, we have Dinah Dare, and coming in from one of my favorite cities or states, Colorado, Bella Fire, as well as our featured panelist for the day, Scarlett Letter. So last week we had our whole little tip debacle, and it's a touchy subject, and it is a touchy one with me. And we're going to just go over a few of our polls. So the poll question was, do you prefer tip splits in shows? Was astounding 56% of you all said yes, and a 32% of you all said no. But then there's that 12% that said depends why. And some of those reasons why were cast size. And if there's a large cast, we don't want to split our money with 17 million different people, because then we walk out with 32 cents. And that's not fun. We had, and it's basically, another one is the skill set. This person said they have a circus skill and they tend to make a lot more tips, but there are specific people that put more labor to it, so they gladly split it. And we have another one, they had a question along with their answer, and it makes sense. Does the producer have a solid plan on collecting tips and accurately dispersing them? And we all know that tips get missed, and if tips are just left on the floor, it doesn't get divided into the pot. So I am going to open it up with, I actually want to know how the legends handle tips. How did you all handle tips, or was it a thing?
Okay, so it's been 30 years. We're going back a while. And there was no such thing as splitting tips. It's all new to me. And it's new to me that, like, the throwing the money like that, it was usually like placed on the stage. So it's never occurred to me. And since I've been back, which is still less than a year ago, I haven't performed enough to like really understand about it. I did the BHOF last June, and then I did one small show after that, and there were no tips involved in either, so I can't speak to that. Though I'm just the ageism thing, I'm thinking I'm probably going to get less tips when I become a part of it, just from what I've experienced about the ageism so far.
Hey, Dinah, your turn, friend.
Hey, lovely. So we don't really have a tipping culture here. So tips are not a normal part of our performance. So if we do get tips, it's at the end of the show and there's literally a bucket that people will throw money in, and that is not at every show. So if that's there, it's automatically split because like people don't throw money on stage here. It's not a thing. It was the weirdest experience when I first performed in America to have that happen. So for me, it's kind of a non-question. I would just assume that everything would be split because that's what I'm used to.
Yes, and I performed overseas too, and I was like, why aren't they throwing money? And I realized Canada, Japan, Panama, all of their dollar bills are not bills, they're coins. And I don't like to be bruised on stage. So it's like there is no tipping because it would hurt.
Yeah, we don't have pound notes anymore. They took pound notes out of circulation 5 to 10 years ago. So it is only coins. And even then, we are a very cashless society. I very rarely have cash on me. So Yeah, but you do not want to be hit in the face with a pound coin. That will hurt.
Yeah, like I keep all of my coins, my dollar coins from when I travel. I'm just like, there's my little memento. All right. Um, let's go with Scarlett.
All right, so a little bit on both of those. I have seen the evolution of the tipping culture in the performance in the almost 21 years of doing burlesque, plus the 6 years of stripping before that. And I've also seen some very clever people with dollars with coins wrapped in them, knowing exactly where to shoot them, which is a different discussion. But transparency, absolutely. Cashless society with the QR codes being at the show QR code and not the individual performer QR code if you're doing the splits. If it's just a show where there's not going to be like a tip pass, then individuals, that's great. But it's so much about the transparency and recognizing that not everybody is doing in the audience where they can even interact with the customers that are going to be wanting to do the tipping. Like the act may not allow them. If your hands have got fans in them, how do you take tips from a customer? Fan dancers aren't going to get those. Or I hated it when people threw the money on the floor because that's a slippery stage that you can't see under the lighting. And there's so many other little small things where I just feel safer, more respected, and on equal accessibility grounds with the entire cast if it's a tip split with the transparency of these reasonings.
All right, Bella.
I may be the newcomer to burlesque in general. I didn't start until I was 46. And so when I started, the tipping culture was very new to me as well. Obviously, with my education background, it's not something where I experienced getting tipped for my work. But there, upfront communication in terms of format and how the production is going to go. I feel like providing information when you sign up for a show, if you are doing a casting and the way that you fill out your form, it should tell you in the casting how you're going to be paid and communication from the producer as to the way the tips are going to be handled up front, I feel like is very important and something that I appreciate. When I first started and the first time anybody threw money at me, I am a trained dancer, and so I agree with Scarlett that that safety hazard with having money on the stage can be very dangerous depending on the type of stage that's there. And also sometimes people throw money at you versus like to you. And so when you're in the middle of a performance and you're getting tagged with wadded up dollar bills and they're hitting you possibly in the chest or in the face, while it may not be intentional, it is also dangerous. And so I appreciate any form of tipping that I do get, but that communication that comes with the format for how you're going to be paid is really important. And I have been in multiple shows in the same city where it's different. So one location, you take your own tips, and another location, it's a tip split. But that is communicated up front. And so you know when you're walking away, are you waiting till the end or are you going to be paid out via Venmo? You get to sometimes choose if you want to wait for your cash. But there's also a format where some of the producers will create a program, and if someone wants to tip you individually, either before or after, there's a QR code associated with you with your Venmo that they can do that real time if they specifically want to tip you, or if they want to also tip the entire cast. There's a separate QR code. And I think that's really important as well, because you may have a special group of friends that comes and they want to ensure that the money that they're throwing comes to you. And I also appreciate when producers, MCs at the top of the show explain that, hey, we split tips here. This is the way we run our shows. And so that way people coming in also know that we want you to spread the love around. Like, don't feel like you only have to tip your human that you came to see, because we want you to reward everybody in the show because we're going to split it anyway. I think that's really important for the audience to know as well.
Because I've held the producer, the MC, as well as the performer role. I hate tip splits. I have been burned numerous times with them. Most recently, and when I say most recently, like 2 years ago, I did a show, and the producer didn't tell us until we got to the show that we were going to be doing a tip split. We also were not informed that we would have to go into the audience ourselves to collect our tips after our act. I walked around, collected my tips because I'm a money brain. I'm doing the money really. I saw at least four $20 bills go in, just that, and on top of the ones and fives or whatever. I was sent $36. And I'm like, that math don't math, but we had a cast of like 212. And there were so many different skill sets that for me, I was taught coming up, if you don't like what you made, step your pussy up. Point blank, period. If you're not doing the job, why are you? It's like the participation trophy. I don't like participation trophies. A lot of us have different skill sets. A lot of us put different things into our act. And like Bella said, hey, sometimes your friends want to make sure you get that money. And then they found out, oh, I tipped $50 and you got $3 of it because there was a tip split. That doesn't make them feel good. And it's just not, I don't like tip splits. I never have, because every time I've had a tip split, it's always been with an extremely large cast. And it always comes to, one time there was a $17 tip. I'm like, how am I getting $17 when I saw an amazing amount of money on the floor for everyone? Or the only time I don't mind a tip split is when I have a cast of 4 or 5, because we're going out there doing 2 numbers. And I know that cast is, for lack of a better term, everyone's pulling their weight. We're professionals. We know what this game is. We know our job is to pull the money. And as well as being an MC, my job is to make sure that these people know what tipping culture is, how to tip, when to tip. If I have a fire performer, before they come on stage, hey, I'll joke and say, I really like this performer. I want to keep them. Let's not throw money until they're done. And then once I intro or extro them off the stage, and I'll tell them, everyone just starts throwing money. So then there's like a collective pile of money. And what Bella said is like throwing it at you. No, not if I'm emceeing a show. Like, we want to keep our performers. Money hurts. Coins hurt even more. Wait to the end, place it on the stage. But there has to be it's everyone's job when it comes to tipping, the performer, the producer, as well as the MC. But yeah, me and tip splits are not friends. I don't like it. I don't want it. Mickey, and then Scarlett.
I just wanted to add that when I started in the early 70s, and I finished up in like I didn't finish obviously, but I was out in the mid 90s. There's only 2 places that I even recall where we got tips. And I worked in France and Japan and across Canada and the States. It wasn't part of the culture. I think we got paid well enough that it just wasn't a thing.
All right, Scarlett.
Just a thought I had that I forgot earlier, in that there's also legal ramifications, because if you're performing in Utah, or you're in one of those rare venues where we get to be maybe like no pasties or nude or something like that, or it's a venue that's used to a strip club or a go-go environment, there's actual legal ramifications of, you can get the building shut down if you allow the tipping to happen in certain manners. The putting it in a garter type thing is technically not allowed in some places. So there are other ramifications that need to be considered, and know the laws of where you're at.
Right, yeah, because I had to learn the Utah one when I emceed there. It's like, they literally told me there's a line, imaginary line you can't cross. Money can come, but it can't touch that ground. And even in Savannah, even though I'm in Atlanta and Savannah's still in Georgia, they have a different law where cannot touch the performer. You cannot go and pull it from a person's hand, because that's considered soliciting. So you have to put it. Right, you have to put it down the bucket. Oh,
Yeah, money has to go down. Yeah. Even in LA. And I don't think people realize that, because the way that people perform at burlesque shows versus what the strip clubs are actually held to is not universal in LA County in Southern California. So yeah, the topless bars I worked at, no, they could not tip you on your body. They needed to put the money down.
Dana, I think you have some words, friend.
I have words. Um, just what Mickey was saying made me think. I was talking to my partner. We're coming to America in like 3 weeks, and we were talking about we need to lift cash for tipping. And I was complaining about tipping culture in general, and I was like, why can't they just pay people properly, and then tipping culture wouldn't be a thing? And is that the same problem here? Do producers rely on tips? So they say, oh, this is your minimal amount, but you'll get tips. So people think they'll calculate, oh, well, I'll make more. Like, should we just be paying people a better rates? Full stop.
Oh, go ahead, Scarlett.
Okay, so yes, but I've also from customers, audience members realized I'm walking a fine line. I'm a regular scheduled show. We are monthly, but I'm also trying to keep a low ticket price, not a zero, but as low as I think I can manage to pay people at least appropriately for a beginner level stage, which is what I produce, that the audience still wants to come. They'll end up spending just as much or more. It's absolutely math brain to an American situation of they think they're getting a great deal because they're coming in for so little, but then they're still buying the drinks and they're still tipping. And it's a math brain where if you give them the expensive ticket, they still have to buy the drinks, but they don't have to tip. And it doesn't work in their brain because that's not a discretionary spend. It's the required spend to get in. And it is definitely a cultural thing. And yes, art should be paid much better than it is and should be paid like it's the real job that it is. And that is absolutely a discussion point.
But yeah, that also leads us into discussion of guarantees, and that's a whole nother worm. God bless.
Another show. Another show.
But so I know I feel like the horrible person because like I won all my money, but it's just we've all had different life experiences when it comes to tipping. And I think that's why we all have these such dynamic and beautiful viewpoints of it. Go ahead, Bella.
I think one of the things that we failed to mention or talk about specifically, which I think was the catalyst for this conversation and was the person that was the guest performer who insisted, was it after the fact that they wanted to take all their tips with them? And so that makes me question, like your situation, Coco, where you talked about you saw a certain amount of money in there, right? And it was like, hey, I did really well. And then you walk away with, $5 or whatever it happens to be, especially with a really large cast. So that made me think, and I've been thinking a lot about this as a traveling performer. We have situations come up where you have an unexpected expense, right? You have car trouble, weird flight delays. You get trapped somewhere from another part of a travel. And if they were in a situation that happened like that, it was a special circumstance, and they had already communicated ahead of time, like, hey, this is the way the payout's going to happen. And then you get there and something terrible has happened. So you have a private conversation with a producer and explain your circumstance. That to me is more professional and appropriate in a situation where you're like, is it possible? Could we maybe this personal situation happened to me and I'm really in a bind. That I think is much different than the situation that we're talking about where someone came in and after the fact, after they've been told, hey, this is the way we handle our shows, this is what they're demanding that this change happen. And the situation where you talked about where you agree to do a show and then you come in and they go, oh, by the way, this is how we pay you. And I think that's very problematic. And so communication, we're back to that, right? Communication, professionalism, transparency. One of the things that I really appreciate with a couple of the shows that happen here in Colorado is that as the money is being collected for tips, we have two kittens that are constantly tallying the money. You can see them counting it. They're very upfront about it. A tabulation sheet is shown at the end of the night where the entire amount of cash that was collected, what happened with the door is shown, the number of casts, the payout, like all the math is there. It's very visible for everyone to see. So before you leave that night, you see how much money was made in each area, what you're going to be paid, and how it's divided and the rationale for that division. And there's no way for anyone to be like, oh, hey, I see a 20 or I see 100, and that's getting, tucked in and going with the producer. If there's expenses for the show based on advertising, marketing, whatever, that needs to also be transparent as well. And so I really appreciate the shows that create a spreadsheet and show everything. And even if they wait a week to pay out because they're waiting for the venue to pay for, to send the money from the door, however they have to wait for that from ticketing, Eventbrite, or whatever that may be. I think that transparency really helps raise the professionalism of the show, and I appreciate when that kind of information is shared as well. So tipping is complicated. It's money, right? It's our livelihoods. And so it can get very sticky and be super uncomfortable because if it's not done in a way that is very upfront and lays out with full transparency what's happening at a show, it makes you question how things are being done with tipping.
Yep, point blank period. Those are my favorite shows to do. Like, I will never outright go to a producer and say, I'm not doing a tip split. Sometimes I just take it on the chin. But most times, as of recently, I've been brought in as the headliner. And they tell me, like, oh, you keep your tips. I'm like, okay, cool. So we are going to wrap this little segment up. Do we have any final thoughts from anyone? All right. So now we are going to move in to our newest piece of news that everybody got that email on Monday. I was at work when I got mine, that they have made the difficult decision to close the BHOF Museum on July 20th, if I am not mistaken. Like I said, there was a post on Facebook. Those of us that are BHOF members got our email and all of that. I'm going to say fun stuff, but we know none of this is fun. And we all read it, and it's like there's not one thing that stands out to me as far to focus on. I have my own personal thoughts, but I'm keeping them to my chest right now because I'm still processing them because I've got some intense feels. So does anyone want to go first? Tell us how you feel about this announcement that we are, for the current moment, those are the words because I like to speak positive things. We don't want to put an end to it. For the current moment, after July 20th, we will not have access to the museum as a museum. Scarlett.
It's heartbreaking. It is understandable. We've been here before, and I have faith that the board and staff that are in that level of decisions have been contemplating this for a very long time and did not take it lightly, and that they have ideas and plans to move forward with it. Because for a little bit of history for people that may not remember because they're newer, museums started off as just a bunch of stuff hung in a trailer in the middle of the desert on a goat farm, and then went into storage and lived in storage for years. And then a little bit of it came out to a small little art, just like literally as a sculptor, the kind of space you would rent from another venue. That's the space we moved into originally in the Fremont district. And then they moved back into storage for a little bit and transitioning into the space that we've come to know now. And under the current environment, it's like, yeah, making sure everything's held safe is kind of the most important thing. And with the funding cuts that are happening and everybody just being in flux and not knowing what to do, I have faith that they did not do this decision lightly and that we've been here before and that they have plans and ideas to move forward.
All right. Dinah.
Yeah, there was an outpouring of sort of heartbreak. I am very lucky. I've said before, I'm coming over to BHOF. I will get to visit, which I'm really selfishly pleased around. I do think that there is potentially a silver lining. They talked about in the email potentially doing some sort of touring exhibit. Thinking about like taking it round, doing a kind of small booth at different festivals, even bringing it over to Europe and having a small booth at the festivals. You could reach new people. You could reach audiences that don't know that this museum exists. If they're then having an online exhibition, it could be right, well, you've seen it in person now because it's touring at whatever festival it's at. You can sign up and see all of it online or more of it online. Edinburgh Fringe Festival is here for a month in August. Do a pop-up for a month. You would, the thousands of tourists and a hell of a lot of American tourists walk through that city, get them in, get them looking, educate them about it. I actually think there's a really unique opportunity here if the board chooses to take it to actually potentially get more people to learn about it. Because the thing about being in a physical space where it is, costs a lot of money to go. Vegas is not cheap. Even if you live in America, it's not cheap. You live in Europe and it's extortionate. So you've got a unique opportunity here to actually take it around and build more knowledge that it exists and get more of the public interested. Obviously I don't know what their plans are. This is something that I was just chatting to my partner about when I was telling him about it. I was like, this, we were just spitballing about what that might look like. Um, but I actually think there could potentially be some really big positives coming out of doing it this way. But that's the silver lining kind of outlook on things at the moment.
All right, Bella.
Like everyone else, it's heartbreaking to hear that we won't have a physical space to go visit because when I go to Vegas to perform, I typically try to go to the museum. The exhibits are always changing. There's always new books and materials available to purchase. Uh, Excellent inspiration and history reminder, and of course, the classes that are taking place there if you're able to go when you are there. So that part is very disappointing, but I agree with the opportunity that is available to maybe reach a broader audience. And I would like to extend an invitation for the museum to maybe explore some spaces. I know we have a location here in Denver that is an extension of Colorado History Museum, and they bring in quite a few exhibits because there's a subset of that focuses on women's history, and I think that could be a good avenue to maybe start pulling in. And there was just an exhibit here that looked at um, bloomers and corsets and the history. And I was like, oh, how perfect. So it's in an old Victorian home, and it could be a really fun way and a space for the museum to do traveling exhibits and to find spaces and locations. And while we are not only focused on women in burlesque and burlesque history, it could be an avenue or a way to get into some spaces where it would open up opportunity and conversation. And also look at vaudeville history in museums, other venues, historical theaters that may want to bring in an exhibit, right, and have something in some of those spaces and locations. I, the first thought that came to my mind as well was preserving history and the culture right now with the political climate. Having someone come in and potentially raid the museum and destroy some of that history and artifacts would be horrible. And we know that there's an attack right now on a lot of our community. And it would be terrible to have anything happen to that history that's been preserved for so long. So while it's sad to see the museum closing down, I can't imagine what the rent is down there. It must be exorbitant. And for them to save money and take a look at how to maybe reinvent themselves again, I think is really important. But the most important piece right now, I think, is really preserving what's there and not knowing what could happen to it if something were to happen with the current political climate. So safety first, I guess, is where I'm landing, and hoping that that is part of the vision right now, is to really think about not only the monetary aspect of it, but a way to make sure that things don't disappear because of what's happening out there in the world right now. We know some of our stages are disappearing because of that reason, and it would be even more heartbreaking to have history erased because of what our current political climate is and what might happen to some of those artifacts.
And piggybacking off of what you said, Bella, My fear is on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as touring with these things. We don't trust the Postal Service. Bags get lost every day. How can they assure us that when they're going east, west, north, south, these things won't be damaged in shipment? These things won't be lost by, however, the only way, or like even said, raided. Like, for me, it's not safe to tour with these things around because things get lost in transit every day, from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. And that would break my heart more, knowing they went somewhere with something that can't be replaced. And the only thing they can tell us is, we don't know what happened. So that's why I would lose my ever loving shit if something happened to those things, because you wanted to tour around the world with them. Yes, it gives people more access, but it also puts that person that's traveling with it in danger, because now you are a moving target for people who don't like you. And it's not safe. It's not safe.
Someone would have to be the benefactor of that. Someone would have to be the person that is the face of that. And yeah, I agree that it could be very scary depending on where you are in the world.
And Mickey, this is your history, not even your history. This is your work. How do you feel about that? Or have you even had a chance to process it?
Well, I have, Coco, this is such an interesting question for me because I was totally unaware that the business had continued. I was totally unaware that it had evolved into something different. When I stepped out, it was because I was kind of pushed out because of tattoos and age. When I was 27, I was an older woman. We have an older artist here. And so, when I got out, I didn't want to, and it was something in my life that I loved. I was very passionate about it. Even when I got out, I told everybody, I said, I loved it. I was a burlesque dancer and I loved it. So even for somebody who was out, and completely honest about it, I didn't know that this culture was transforming and that there was a Burlesque Hall of Fame. There would have been no such thing back in my day because we weren't honored, at that time. So it would be a shame to have that disappear now because it was a different time. So, God, you guys have got wonderful comments. I wish I could have more.
Well, you added more by just giving us the history to want to preserve. So you did your part. You are, along with our other legends, the reason why we're having this conversation now. Because if you didn't do what you did and what you're continuing to do, we'd be just all taking a nap right now. Do we have any more questions, comments, concerns before we move on, friends?
I'm really glad they're staying open through BHOF so that all the people that are coming to the Weekender have the opportunity to go one more time. That would be that's the warm fuzzy of this, is they're not shutting doors right away.
Yes.
And if you are coming to BHOF, make sure that you have your tickets, because there's the shimmy shuttle with the ride from the hotel, or like I'm going Sunday afternoon because my volunteer schedule doesn't line up with that. But just make sure if you are coming to the Weekender, you make that pilgrimage to the museum.
All right. Yes, thank you for that plug, because it's important. And I think that's what a lot of people forget at BHOF, that they arrange a way for us to get there collectively. Because that's another part of travel that a lot of people don't finance in, is that those Ubers and Lyfts. All right. So we are going to take a small break, and we're going to come back and we're going to hand it over to Scarlett Letter, who's going to bring us into our next topic of discussion. Thank you all for listening thus far. Go grab a drink. We'll meet you back shortly.
Hey, this is Victor Devon, and I don't want to talk about Green Chef. I'm sure they're great, I'm sure they're lovely, but I would rather promote you. If you are in the burlesque industry and you have a side hustle, a front hustle, a back hustle, or any kind of hustle where you contribute to the community or the industry, I would love to include information on you, and I would love to give it to people via the podcast. Please send your information to weburlesquepodcast@gmail.com, and if we can make things happen, I would really, really love it. Thank you so, so much for supporting the pod, and thanks for listening.
Welcome back. I hope your thirst has been quenched and you're ready to dive back into these amazing conversations. We are going to hand it off to our featured panelist, Scarlett Letter.
Thank you, Coco. So there were a list of topics and I've kind of combined two of them. I have a basic statement with some explanations. So for the purpose of longevity and evolution of our own personal arts and careers and the art form of burlesque in general, I'd like to discuss editing and retiring acts and also its potential correlation to both perceived and actual ageism, because that is a prevalent discussion today. I'm going to give a little bit of history on myself, and then we're going to go to if anybody would like to discuss this. I've been doing burlesque for, it'll be 21 years this October. So I have acts that are that long. Scarlett Letter is almost legal to drink. She's definitely legal to vote. And a lot of things have changed, and editing acts as a necessity both to make producers happy or to make yourself relevant and happy, I feel can lead into this, and I would love to hear some other thoughts on it. Takers? Yay, Coco.
I'll go first. I am not as old. I'm almost a preteen. I'm like 9. I'm 9 years old. So she's getting into that rebellious stage where she does what the fuck she wants. But I have retired certain acts because my mission statement changed. So the acts that I did my why at the end of the year like I normally do, and I noticed some of the songs weren't lining up because yes, I was able to tell a story, but they weren't telling my story. So my mission going forward, all of my acts are done by Black artists. Because if I'm going to be on stage telling a story, that's the story I need to be telling because that's my culture, my story. So a lot of my signature act, such a weird term, it had to be retired. Yeah, 2 of them, 3. Oh God. Yeah, I almost had to start over. So I had to retire 3 acts just because, yay, they were great acts. But one of them, oh God, that dirty pretty, my body can't do that anymore. I look young, but I'm 43. I'm somebody's grandma. This body hurts. So along with not aligning, like I'm not dropping to my knees. No, let the kids do it. Get some, there's not a knee pad in the world that'll make me drop down to my knees right now and twirl tassels because I got to get back up. It's not happening.
Oh, yeah, no more drop splits. All right, Bella.
I am not quite as old as Coco Rose as a performer. I am out of kindergarten and into I think like 3rd grade. So I'm about 7 to 8 years in. And the first year or so, I only did group acts and I did not do full striptease. So it took a while for me to graduate and film myself a little bit. But I am also going to be 55 in October. And I teach acro chair, I teach heels classes, I dance ballroom, teach fitness classes. So when I retired from higher education, I leaned really hard into the dance aspect of it. But I also feel it, like Coco was saying, a lot more than I used to. And I got my first injury performing back in November. And I didn't realize that I partially tore my bicep doing some of that super physical stuff. And it took me a while to heal. And I took a month off and did some, PT. And while I say I took a month off, I didn't do some of my more physical acts, but I was still on stage because I still need my income. And I think that's a big part of what we're talking about is as you get older, the limitations happen with your body. Like everything hurts more. Do I still do some of the things that I want to do on stage? Yes. Like last night I did my one of my most physical acts and everything hurts today. Literally everything hurts today. And I move a lot slower and you have to weigh like over time how much is it worth doing that? And so some of those acts I will probably perform for the next year, and then I don't know how much more I will do those. And also, when I first started performing, there were songs that were speaking to me very much like Coco was saying, but I got feedback from some of my friends saying that that song might be a little young for you. Like, do I really? Yeah. So it's like, do you take that feedback? Yeah, so do you perform, to a pop song because it speaks to you in the moment, right? It also speaks to the audience. It may make you more marketable, but then when your peers look at you who aren't in the industry and go, I don't know if you should perform to that or not. Yeah, so it's one of those that I was like, excuse me, I like this number. Yeah, so. That I think is also an interesting dialogue as well. That ageism as a perception from the audience is something interesting that comes back as well. So while I may really enjoy the song, does it resonate with an audience? And so that is a marketability piece. And our producer's going to book a number like that because that song may not fit, who I am in terms of the era that I am. So right now I'm sort of leaning more into I used to do a lot of neoclassic, and now I'm leaning a little bit more into classic for that reason because I feel like that genre is speaking to me and the era is speaking to me and it just seems apropos in the moment. And I don't know if that has been influenced by the music that I'm listening to or by the feedback that I'm getting from some of the people that I'm interacting with. And also, some of my mentors have highly encouraged me to do some of that as well. And so I think all of that information culminates in what do I want to put on stage? But I also feel that there are some spaces where I have been not invited to. It's been a thanks, but no thanks because I'm not under 30.
I have some responses, but Dinah has her hand up.
I mean, my first response is respectfully to those people, fuck them and perform to whatever you want. This is my very honest response because it's what speaks to you. You're the performer. Yes, there's a marketability element, but it's what you want to put out there. If you want to do classic because you want to do classic, great. Don't do classic because they're telling you that's all you can do because of your age. Um, that came to me while you were talking. My original point was, I think I'm the baby here of the group. I've been doing this for 6.5 years. Um, I am 36 this month. So I'm not kind of in the older range of performers in Glasgow. Um, but I didn't start until I was like 29 as it was. And I've retired a few acts already. And it's been because I have grown as a performer and I have changed. And there's other acts. I have a costume that I think is on its third act because I just can't quite. The first two versions that I made of it just weren't right. And there's other acts that I've used the same costume, but I've just remade basically a whole new song and a whole new choreo. Instead of retiring it, I've just like reused what I've got. So I tend not to say that act isn't retired, that act has evolved. Um, so I think that's the difference. If you're saying, and there's an element for me around um body as well. Like I have problems, maybe 36, but I sit all day at my job. I have to be careful of my right hip in particular because I also can't sit like a normal person and I have my feet like all tangled up and underneath me, so I put pressure on my hip. So I have to be careful what I do. Yeah, it's like this. I'm sitting all day. I have to be careful. So I like walk and I have standing desk and all that nonsense. Um, but I know that there's certain acts and certain moves and things that I just won't put in because I'm like that. I'm just gonna end up hurting myself, and that's stupid. And there's acts that I started that I tried to push myself, And now I've looked at it and go, no, I'll have it the way that I can do it. And I think, yeah, as you grow, your acts are allowed to evolve with you. You don't have to, as I said, you don't have to retire it. You can just, it changes as you change.
Um, Before we go back to Bella, I'd like to hear what Mickey has to say. You're back to performing again, and we're so happy that you are. Are you revisiting your old acts? Are you building new acts for the new audience? How are you handling this?
Wow, that's quite a question. It's a loaded subject for somebody. I turned 69 yesterday. So yeah, it's going to be a good year. My son is in the back making a new song for me because I've become a rapper in the interim, in my downtime. And a year ago, I guess it was in March, they reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to come to BHOF? And I hadn't performed for 30 years. So, but I'm like, yes, oh my God, yes. And I went through my costumes. I had pretty much one costume that I could still fit into. And it was a classic costume. So I pulled it out, and I created a song called House of Teas for the Burlesque Hall of Fame. And I performed it as a fusion, thinking I was going to be really unique because nobody in my day did a fusion. And I come to find out that almost everybody is doing fusion nowadays. So I fit right in. However, in my downtime, also in that 30 years where I wasn't burlesquing, I've been an acting coach and an actor and a rapper. So creativity has still been a big part of my life. And I've found that, as Coco was saying, as you age, your mission changes. And I wouldn't want to do the same things that I did way back. It just would so be not who I am today. I've got a much wiser stance than I had back then, and I don't want to say those same silly things that I was really proud to profess to the world back then. So it's fun now because my vision has changed, and not everybody's going to get it. There's young people who are not going to get what I'm saying, but that's okay. I'm bringing what I am because I'm an artist, and the way I do it is the way I do it. Now, regarding nudity, my parents are Danish, so nudity has never been an issue with me. But when I performed at BHOF, all I took off was my cape and my hat. But I'm fine with going naked. I've been a model. I've been a naked model. I'm in a Nadia Lee Cohen's book, 100 Naked Women. I'm not against being naked, even at my age, but I have to find a way to work it back into burlesque. I'm not just going to jump in and just say, well, here it is now. It has to be a part of the art, at least my vision of the art, and everybody's vision is different. But I'd like to circle back. And since I worked at BHOF, that was my first show back. And I don't think I'm getting jobs locally. And I know they're performing locally, because I've joined all the groups and I see them. Nobody's asking me to perform. And I'm thinking, I'm feeling, because I'm older and I've seen it before, I think it's ageism. You don't think so? It's just me.
I think Coco and I both have experiences to speak to this specifically.
I honestly think it's money because you are a legend. My stance on legends is they should not have to pay for anything when they come to perform. Flight, hotel, food, guarantee. None of it should come out of your pocket because it is our job as the new generation to make sure you don't have a worry in the world. You come up, shake some ass, go home. That's your job. So for my stance, I think that's why you're not getting booked is we ain't got no money. And we would feel like trash if we were to ask you to perform for a door split or quote unquote lowball you what you're worth. But if there's a show you want to be in, reach out to the producer. Say, hey, this is what I am able to accept comfortably. Or if you just want to go out there and throw it in a press circle for free, let the producer know. But I'm sure they're not going to let you work for free. But that's what my stance is. Scarlett?
It basically, yeah, there's an embarrassment factor. Like, I don't even bring in out of town performers that are in my peer group into Reno because I can't put them up. I don't have the space to put them up. I barely have a couple options to put classes up in, so I don't want to offend them by lowballing an offer or not respecting their skill and history and what they absolutely bring to the table, which I think I'm also doing a disservice to the community because I'm also not exposing them to more. Um, so there will be some producers where it absolutely is ageism, and I've encountered that myself because I'll be 49 in October, and it never comes up or something like that. But yes, it is absolutely a thing. But I think quite often for the legends, it's because we're embarrassed to offer what we're currently paying each other.
Just ask. Just ask. Because everything is a negotiation. Because we, like Scarlett said, we don't ask because we're afraid to embarrass, but then you're not getting booked because same thing. You're not asking. So have a conversation if there's a show you want to do and find a happy medium ground for everybody.
So I wanted to come back to some points that we had, which Mickey even brought up. One costume left that you fit in, because I've got costumes as a seamstress that are 20 years old, and it's like, well, I sort of fit in that one. Maybe that's not the most flattering costume anymore. So that self-editing and revisiting, this is an accountability statement for myself. I've been saying this for 4 years. I'm going to do a blog of my 20 years of acts, because I used to do a new act every month called Revisit, Revise, and Retire. And I just want to go through chronologically of like, no, this act doesn't serve me anymore. Or I already gave away that costume and that was a bad idea. Or this was one of those ones you built just for that one show and you spent way too much money on and you never are going to do it again, and just get it out of the log so that it's done with and doesn't serve anymore. Oh, there was a thought that somebody had and I don't remember what it was. Bella's got more.
I think the revision aspect that we've talked about is really important, because sometimes when we start a piece where we are in our life, we're sending a message out, right? And you're getting it out of your body because you're going through something. And that's actually how I started burlesque. I went through a really horrible divorce, and it was a self-reclamation journey. And the first act that I made, the very first signature act that I did, and put on a big festival stage, the what it meant to me then and what it means to me now are very different. I still do the number. I love the number. It speaks to me on many levels because it talks about my journey, and it resonates with me in a different way now than it did then. And I feel like it speaks to audiences as well. And I always get very emotional when I do it on stage, because it helps me kind of reflect on my journey and my history and how much I've grown and changed. And I feel like some of the acts that I created early on, I haven't retired them, but if I look at a video from early on, it's been a huge reclamation process in that as well. It's grown, right? I changed the choreography because I learned more about performing on that process, or I learned more about myself. My confidence level changed. I learned how to be still. And as a dancer, we always want to move, right? So as you learn things about the art itself and yourself as a performer, that revisit and reclaim all of those things I think are really important. And then also the costuming journey, the feedback you get early on and what you can afford when you start and what you understand about costuming when you start, I feel like grows and changes as well. And one of the things about coming to the art and returning to the art, um, reaching out, I think, is really important, because if there are shows that are local in your area and they don't know that you're interested and available, or you haven't made yourself known in a larger network, then I think people aren't going to necessarily reach out directly to you. But if you're the one reaching out saying, hey, I want to expand my circle. I, have been performing with this group and only this, and I need to explore different stages and different spaces. Would you be open to? I think that's really important, widening your network as well, because sometimes we stay with where we're comfortable, and that doesn't necessarily help us grow as an artist either. And it can be very self-limiting. And learning what else is out there and who is supportive in your region, I enjoyed that aspect of it. Was it terrifying at times? Yes, absolutely. And so I think that um, broadening your circle is always really important and helps you grow.
To expand on that a little bit, it has been my experience in an evolutionary cyclical manner that as somebody who does predominantly classic, because that tends to be what speaks to me the most, there'll be phases where nobody wants to book classic, which feels like an ageism discussion because I've been around for so long and there's this cyclical repeat on that situation. But then also they forget that I can do other things because the only thing I put on the stage is the stuff that people recognize as the classical things. Dinah had a great point in the chat of your art evolves as you grow. And I think that's really great. Mickey, I kind of want to hear more about this rapping because I think that makes you a much braver, like I want to hear how you're incorporating that into your burlesque if you are.
Can we do an extra with Mickey's rap as well? Like, can you send a song? Because I would love to hear it. It's like our exit from the session.
Yeah, I'm trying to introduce everybody to House of Teas because I wrote it for burlesquers, and like I want people to listen to the lyrics. It's fun and it's inclusive, and it's all about burlesque. It's just one of my favorite things in the whole world, if not the most favorite thing in the whole world. Totally lost my train of thought there.
But so you recorded the rap and you're dancing to the rap. You're not doing a live rap on stage, correct?
I do take the mic. However, even with the mic, my voice does not project well unless and then it doesn't sound well. So I use my recorded music and I use the mic. Now, I don't have to use the mic and I can just mouth the words, but that's a little bit less rappy than I'd like, because I've seen dancers, they start singing along to the song that they're doing, but they're not thinking that they're doing that. They're not in control of that portion of their brain that like, oh, my mouth is doing something that's not, unless they're doing it intentionally. But I've seen people perform where their mouth is just moving and it's like it's not adding, and it's, so I like to use the mic even though it's pretty new. I've only been doing it since 2020 and doing it very little, but I've made like several songs at this point and I perform them. I performed my last burlesque to House of Teas at a rap lineup, and I did burlesque to it, and I took off my hat and I took off a cape and they loved it, which was so cool because that's a whole rap venue where I brought burlesque into it. So that was really fun for me to be able to introduce it to a whole group of people who you wouldn't expect would like the older type of burlesque, not the like rap, the rapping,
Yeah, no, that's amazing and something we all need to learn about finding new audiences, because I think that's a cyclical issue also in a lot of cities where the same people come to the same show every time, and we need new audiences as well. Do we have any more thoughts on ageism or self-editing of acts? No. I think we've had some great discussion, and I'm going to throw this back to Coco.
All right. And Coco's lost. I ate a pickle and it was really spicy, and I think it fried my brain. Hey, friends, we are going to take another break. Thank you, Scarlett Letter, for being my tech person in the booth. So, again, visit the restroom, have a little smoky smoke if that's your thing, get some water, and we'll see you back shortly.
Hi, Hi, I'm Jen Ponton.
And I'm Lillian Bustle.
And we're the hosts of All the Fucks,
a podcast about vulnerability.
But it's more than just that. It's nostalgia.
It's unrequited crushes.
It's the mortifying moments that make you want to crawl back inside your own belly button.
Ooh, and somehow it's sometimes about pelicans.
A pelican allegory, if you will.
Oh, I will.
So if your heart has ever felt like a skinned knee,
oh, you'll fit right in as one of our fuck buddies.
All the Fucks. A storytelling podcast wherever you listen.
All right, welcome back, friends. You have been listening to WEView. Lastly, we are going to rifle in our mailbag, and our letter today, anonymous, of course. Do you have any tips on how to budget or keep track of your expenses for performing? I feel like I'm spending thousands of dollars on things I use only once or twice and can't travel with. Do you declare your expenses into your taxes? Who wants to take this one? Because I know I was itching too, Scarlett. Go for it, friend.
Okay, I am no longer a certification in anything. However, I have done my years as a bookkeeper for miscellaneous bars and for a bunch of dancers and things like that. And yes, if we want people to treat this industry like the industry that it is and treat art as a business, because this is a job, you need to record and report your expenses and your income on doing this. As the best method to do it, that is, everybody's brain is different. Like, that is a completely different discussion. But once you start buying those large props or the big pieces you can't travel with, you need to start recognizing that pattern and habit and figure out how to actually use the things. But maybe for you, it's a sheet of paper for this one act, and anything you spend on that one act is just on that sheet of paper. Maybe you're a spreadsheet guru and you've got a tab for each one. There is no right answer because everybody's brain is different. And maybe you're the kind of person that's just going to keep a box of receipts and give it to somebody that can sort it out. And that is a valid discussion because every brain is different. But absolutely, if we want people to respect this as a business and an art form, you need to record, report, learn about amortization, learn about depreciation. That $1,000 item you can expense for 3 years maybe, but just ask the questions, keep the paperwork, the records. That is just as important as us remembering the legends, because this is how we make this a legitimate discussion.
And for me, my favorite word is ROI, return on investment. And people think your return on investment is, oh, I went to the show and I made some money. No, Buttercup. You, like Scarlett was saying, I'm a pen to paper person because I'm an old hoe. Everything goes in a book. And when I'm looking at my return on investment, how much did I spend on gas? How much did this hair bow cost? How much did I spend on this pedicure, these contact lenses, whatever? And then I tally all of that up. I'm like, all right, this is how much I need to make to pay this act off. And as self-discipline, because I was one of those humans who was creating an act every month. No, I told myself years and years ago, I can't create another act until this act has been paid off and is now bringing in more money. So that's how I keep myself legitimate. I'm like, this is a business. Taxes are being paid on it. I have to show where this money is going. Yes, this is fun and great, but this is a means of income for me. So yeah, expense it. And that expensing does get tricky. Like, what can you write off? What can you not write off? Again, how long can you write this off? So yeah, it's find your local tax preparer. They'll help you out with all of those things because all of our lives are different and all of us are able to expense things differently. Or sometimes we just want to create and have fun, and that's fine too. But like
hobbies is a negotiable expense on your taxes.
It is, but it's like you have to find what little bracket works for you. Because what works for me is not going to work for Scarlett. And because Dinah's over on the other side of the pond, it damn sure ain't going to work for her. So it's like, what works best for your budget? And also sometimes In America, we know cash doesn't exist. That's a sneaky little loophole. You didn't hear that from me. But anyway.
Always complain, always count as much of your income, cash included, that you have your name on for your expenses. Because if you are paying bills and there is no income to match it, that is your audit ticket.
There you go. But yeah, and that's why we have that new little thing that Cash App and Venmo and PayPal have started taxing us.
Not taxing us, but turning in our tax records.
Well, because I get so much coming in. Like I said, different. They look at mine very strategically because they're like, oh, this is a lot of money coming in, friend. What are you doing here? So taxes have to be paid on it. And just because of other things I've done or set myself up for, I got to account for all of it, or because it ain't going to work out well in my favor. And I don't look good in Prison Orange. Bella!
BurlesqueCon a few years ago, Trixie Minx did a great session on the business of burlesque. And one of the things I think is really important for performers to think about is, are they going to be a hobbyist or are you going to turn it into a business? And at that point, you have to decide, are you establishing a company? And if you are doing that, then you need to make sure that you do it, because that gives you the opportunity to arrange things differently and do some separation. And so once you establish a business, you need a separate bank account. You need to make sure that when you set up a PayPal and a Venmo, that they're under a business name, not a personal. And so you have things very separated. And then also that's where your accounting can really start to come in and help. So a vehicle, right? Keeping track of all your mileage to every single show and event, making sure that when you are doing flights and all of those things, you're purchasing them on a business credit card, not on a personal. And so that separation becomes, I think, really important. And then you also do have to show income, right? Because only so long can you show the loss. So if you're doing big investments on, say, like costume pieces, you're having somebody create something custom for you, that return on investment becomes really important. How many times are you putting that act on stage so that eventually it gets paid for? Having a benefactor of some kind, a super fan who may help you pay for some of those costumes, is very beneficial and helpful. And alternate sources of income where you're selling merge, where you can purchase things that are smaller amounts and offset some of your expenses, like photos, doing things where you have some interaction that may be on social media or some other platforms, whatever you choose those to be, that help you with promotion and offsetting costs become really helpful. But there's only so long where you can go into debt with doing things like burlesque, and then you're back to it being a hobby. So if you do convert it to the business, you eventually have to show income. And so keeping track, really, really good records become important over time. The more that you're traveling, the more that you're performing, and putting those records into place so that you have a system. I've been telling myself every year that I'm going to start organizing things and getting things set up before it becomes tax time. And I haven't quite gotten on board with that yet, even though I say I'm going to do it, I never do. But having a monthly accounting, I think, would be very beneficial to me personally. And I'm putting it out there in the universe, saying I'm going to change my pattern.
Well, there's a bunch of people that do don't forget to clean your makeup brushes. Maybe we should have a bunch of us start doing it's the first of the month. Have you done your math for last month?
I love that. I think that's a great idea. And they do have mileage apps on your phone that you can turn it on and off, right, to track your mileage, because I'm driving about 26,000 miles a year over the last 2 to 3 years for performing, which means part of my vehicle expenses can then go into that write-off. So those are things that everyone doesn't necessarily know all the things about their taxes, but it's important, right? You've got to document and balance your budget, so to speak. And so if I go to an international festival, I don't know that I can necessarily put that into my accounting, because part of that may be a vacay, right? I'm going to go extra time to enjoy it. And my impetus to go to the festival is potentially to see part of the world again. But if I add that $1,200 flight into my budget, if I didn't have like a banner year, I'm not going to show any profit. So you also have to think about, what are you putting in there, even though it may be an expense? Was it really an expense that you want to record? And also all those cash tips like we're talking about, those are coming in. You really need to run that through your account because they need to see that income. So you have to think about how much of that cash is going to go right into a costume or my gas or whatever that will offset my expenses right away. But you still need to report it because they need to show that you are making money, that it is going through. So as much as cash is king, it's still part of your income. And you want to make sure that you're showing that you are making money doing this. And that's if you are doing it as a business. If it's a hobby, something totally separate. I love that. I think that's a great idea. And they do have mileage apps on your phone that you can turn it on and off, right, to track your mileage because I'm driving about 26,000 miles a year over the last 2 to 3 years for performing, which means part of my vehicle expenses can then go into that write-off. So those are things that everyone doesn't necessarily know all the things about their taxes, but it's important, right? You've got to document and balance your budget, so to speak. And so if I go to an international festival, I don't know that I can necessarily put that into my accounting because part of that may be a vacay, right? I'm going to go extra time to enjoy it. And my impetus to go to the festival is potentially to see part of the world again. But if I add that $1,200 flight into my budget, if I didn't have like a banner year, I'm not going to show any profit. So you also have to think about what are you putting in there, even though it may be an expense. Was it really an expense that you want to record? And also all those cash tips like we're talking about, those are coming in. You really need to run that through your account because they need to see that income. So you have to think about how much of that cash is going to go right into a costume or my gas or whatever that will offset my expenses right away. But you still need to report it because they need to show that you are making money, that it is going through. So as much as cash is king, it's still part of your income. And you want to make sure that you're showing that you are making money doing this. And that's if you are doing it as a business. If it's a hobby, something totally separate.
Yeah. As far as the government is concerned, bartering is still income.
But then, yeah, you also have to be careful because there's some of these producers who pay in cash and they aren't doing the things that we're doing. So when we start reporting our income and they're like, this doesn't exist, it's a mess. So it's also, yeah, like where's my I-9?
Not everybody's the 1099s, right, is what you're talking about. Because not everybody's. There's a venue in Colorado that I work at fairly consistently, and they had some trouble last year and they didn't get their 1099s done the way that they needed to. So I still had to report all my income, but I don't have a 1099 for them, and I should have. And so we got 1099s rocking and rolling this year, but last year I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, because a lot of these new producers, or even some of the old ones, they just don't want to do it. And it's just like, now you're putting me in a pickle. Because what do I do in this situation? Because I'm showing this, but then I've got all this extra money floating around. Where'd it come from? So it's life is hard and things aren't fair. But yeah. But Mickey, you're from well, what I was told was that you all would have like managers and bookers. So how did reporting work with you all?
To be perfectly honest, Coco, I used to drink a lot. And I don't remember a lot of it. But yeah, I had Jess Mack out of Las Vegas, and he would send me anywhere in the world I wanted to go. And I don't think there was any yearly like tax thing going on. Nobody ever knocked on my door and I wasn't thinking about it, so things are very different now. And I haven't made any money at all this year. I haven't really performed this year. I do intend to, so I can't contribute to, but I'm taking in what you guys are saying. So, because I intend to make a little bit of money. Yeah. I love performing, so it's like I will keep doing it one way or the other, but I love burlesque.
Well, the other thing too is that it's the over $600, right? Is the other part of it, right? Because if you're not making over $600 from each individual entity, then there's a whole separate conversation that goes on. But regardless, for the people who are trying to run it as a business, whether it's that over $600 or not, you got to think about, are you going to put that through your account to show that checks and balances of what's getting spent as compared to what's coming in? But the 1099 thing is definitely a red flag in some cases. And I think I paid my accountant way more than I wanted to make sure that I'm doing everything legally. Because that's expensive too.
Yep, that's another expense that they don't tell you about. And then that's another reason why some people stick to hobbyists, is because they don't want to deal with the rigmarole of, I have to keep up with all this stuff. I just can't be out here all willy-nilly just spending money. But also what they don't take into consideration is when we go to shows and we tip, we can write that off, because that is technically a business expense. Because this is what we do. We're at our place of employment per se. So sometimes you can, if you put your paperwork properly, you can write off some shows. Don't just go to shows so you can try to balance your books back down to zero or show a loss and all that fun stuff. But then again, that's what your tax preparer is for.
Don't forget that if you're doing benefit shows, that somebody is probably getting a tax receipt. And I know with Peep Show, we used to offer it to anybody in the cast because neither Chris or I were claiming, or were in a high enough bracket where a tax deduction for a contribution was worth it to us. So we gave the receipt for the whole show to a performer once. Just like, no, nobody else wants it. You're the only person that's actually filing that kind of taxes. And then she was shocked at, we just gave it to her because it was more than she could claim as well. But those benefit shows, especially if it's a 501c3, back to the original question though, it's like, yeah, you just have to write it down. Write down your expenses and then write down every show you get paid to do that act. And eventually the act will break even. But if you can't travel with a big prop, you need to be considering the storage on the prop, the value of the prop, the depreciation of the prop. Or, here's my tax nerd answer. Amortization is Dita Von Teese sells an act to somebody else. They get to say that they are doing the Dita Von Teese version of this act. Taxes are fun.
Numbers are cool. But yeah, that is also like, I have gone to the side of, I won't buy a certain prop if I can't travel with it, because that's what I do. I don't perform in Atlanta, point blank, period, because financially it's not worth it to me. But if I can't travel with this prop easily and affordably, yay, it's pretty and fun, but it's got to stay where it is. So that's another thing you have to factor in. Are you going to be a traveling performer? Are you going to be a traveling performer that is driving around and you can just throw stuff in the car? So that's part of your budget as well when it comes to expensing things, because some people have to have things shipped. I'm terrified to have anything shipped. They can't go in my hand or in my suitcase. It doesn't come. I don't check bags for that reason, because our props 9 times out of 10 are one of a kind. Once they're gone, they're gone. And getting them covered under insurance is very tricky, because even with your travel insurance, sometimes they'll look at that and you give them a value and they'll be like, no, that's not worth that. But I'm like, yes, here's the receipt. So there's numbers. It's a lot of numbers. So you have to find an accountant or tax preparer that is privy to your situation and knows how to do it, or someone that has been in the game long enough to give you the tricks and tips to it. So any more, Dinah, how does it work over there?
I was like, I'm just going to be quiet because I don't know how American tax works.
They don't. The answer is they don't. The tax system does not. It does not work.
We have to declare anything that we earn over £1,000. So if we earn over £1,000, you have to declare it. If you don't, you don't. But you can declare your expenses and everything. So, um, yeah, it can kind of even, and we can like because it would be for me, it's a second job. I can expense way more than I've earned, and it will just reduce my taxes in general. Um, but you also get taxed higher on your second job, so you have to kind of work out if you've made a lot of money, is it actually worth it? Because you could end up being taxed like all of it pretty much. So it's a kind of balancing act, the same as anything. I do think, kind of going back to like Bella said, somebody did a business of burlesque class. I do think that's something in general we just need more of across the industry is uh education on how to actually deal with your money. Um, I know there's a Wild Vixen does similar things in the UK, occasionally does like a Zoom on them. But yeah, I think it's something that we don't talk about enough, to be honest, or educate our newer performers about.
Because money's scary.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, money is scary. Asking for money is scary. Scary. Spending money is scary. It's just, and it's scary. And people are afraid to have conversations around money.
And no, and yeah, no one wants to talk about money. No one wants to. But I recently did this is slightly off topic, but I recently did an Instagram post where I broke down exactly how much it cost for me to go to a festival that I went to a week and a half ago. And it popped off.
I did that a few years
Yeah.
ago too. And they got mad at me. I'm like, okay, go out there and free ball then.
So the festival I went to actually liked it and they were fine with it, but people were like, "Thank you so much for sharing this," and I was like, "This is why we need to be talking about this more honestly." But we don't like to talk about money in burlesque.
Wow, I think it's a Western society thing. We don't talk about money. We're not trained to talk about money. My mom still won't talk about her taxes, and yeah.
See, it's weird because the industry I'm in tech, my day job, and our salaries are completely transparent. Everyone knows what everyone else earns. And it's been like that in most of the companies I've been in. So like talking about money is not a big deal. But then I got into burlesque and everyone's like, and I'm like, oh right, okay, we don't talk about okay.
See, I like talking about money because it keeps people honest. And that's why they don't like me, because I'll start bringing up numbers and pulling up forms because my one of my previous lives, I worked in collection law. So I can find any information I need about taxes, about property, who owns what, when you paid for what. So yeah, they don't like having money conversations with me. But Bella,
I have some words of wisdom as a traveling performer associated with props because um, my tagline is "You're professor of the provocative," but I'm also the professor of props. When I first started, I didn't use any, and then I went through this phase where every act had to have a bazillion props, and then I would submit them to festivals, and then I would have to drive them across the country. One of them being Hollywood Burlesque Festival, that Dear Future Husband act that I have has a whole bunch of props. So I had to drive it from Colorado to California, and that's a 2-day drive. And so it was insane. I'm glad I did it. It was a wonderful experience. But I think you get wiser after you do those adventures once or twice about how far am I willing to drag this prop across the country. I have a Western act that I submitted to a festival down south. And after I submitted it, I was like, why did I do that? Because it has a saddle and a saddle stand, and I can't put that on an airplane, right? So it's like, am I really going to drive this all the way to Savannah or somewhere like that? So I think as you start submitting to festivals and deciding where you're going to go, you have to figure out the expenses associated. And that's a really important conversation. I think it could be a whole nother discussion topic about what is the purpose of festivals, right? Why do you want to go to a festival and what does a festival bring you? Because is the intent for you to become more visible so people know who you are more, and then that makes you maybe more bookable because people see you on stage and they understand your charisma because a video and live stage are not necessarily the same. And so what's your goal? Like, what is your goal? So why do you want to go to festivals? What's your goal in submitting to festivals? because you also grow, I think, differently as a performer when you attend some of them because classes are available and stage experience is different and all of those things. So that's a whole nother topic of conversation. But um, just learning the lessons of being a traveling performer and then building acts and using props that are packable, right? Will they fit into a suitcase? And what happens if they do get lost and are they replaceable? And I always carry on like all of my base pieces, all of my costume pieces that I'm taking off. They go in a compression bag. They go in a case. It goes into my carry-on. I'm not willing to part with it because some of those designs are custom. I've spent a lot of time and energy and money in having those pieces created. And so learning how to pack, right? And learning what to take. And I think all of those are good conversations as well. But traveling, performing, the cost benefit of what acts you submit and where you go and how you get there is a really important conversation because it does get expensive. And that amortization that we're talking about over time is what's your return on investment for A, building those acts and then B, traveling with them. So that is a really good question that was asked and that amortization of doing it, right? So once you take it to a big festival across the country, and you spend the money for the airfare and the hotel or the Airbnb, maybe an Airbnb instead of a hotel or Ubers or all of those things. Yeah, what was the payoff for that and what happens after that? So does it get you into more shows? Does it get you to be more bookable? And then how do you amortize that over time? But words of wisdom, don't take 16 props to an event and drive it across country. I only do that once.
But yes, shameless plug. That is what I teach in my Have Pasties Will Travel class. How to pack properly, how to get there. What is your reason for doing festivals? What is your reason for being a traveling performer? All of those factor into your ROI because you got to figure out what your why is first. Why are we creating all of this amazing greatness? What is our end goal? All right, friends, do we have any final words for our letter? All right. So hopefully, Mr. or Themster. I like Themster. Themster makes me happy because we don't know what this anonymous person is. Hopefully, we were able to give you some insight, answer that question, and you can move forward, enjoy in performing. If not, write us back. We'll figure it out. That's what we're here for. So, thank you all for joining us on this edition of WEView under the We Burlesque umbrella. I have been your moderator, Coco Rose, out of Atlanta, Georgia. You can find me on Instagram under the Coco Rose because they won't let me add the accent du. On Facebook under Coco Rose or in your favorite airport. We would like to thank our featured panelist, Scarlett Letter.
Yes, you can find me live in Reno, Nevada, Tahoe area if you're not good at geography. And part of my personal ageism is scarlettletterburlesque.com. It is a website. I do not have a tree link. We're going to the website. I have some social medias, but I don't use them properly. So Scarlett Letter Burlesque. And come see Sweet and Lethal in Reno on the third Thursday of every month.
Fire.
My socials, you can find me on Facebook at Bella Fire-Ray. They make me add the Ray because they say I'm not a real person otherwise. I've tried to delete it many times. Also on Instagram, that is at bella.fire.colorado. And I perform up and down the Front Range in Colorado. You can catch me on stage almost every single weekend somewhere. I try to perform as often as possible and love being on the stage and highly encourage anyone who wants to try burlesque to get their buns out there to a class and experience the joy of being a burlesque performer.
Our friend from across the pond, Dinah Dare.
Hey, so yeah, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok at Dinah_Dare. If you're ever in Glasgow, Scotland, come say hi. And if you see my blue hair running around Vegas at BHOF, also come say hi.
And last but not least, the reason that we are all out here shaking pasties, our legend, Mickey.
That's funny. We rarely wore pasties back in the day. Anyway, I'm on Spotify as rapper Young May, and wherever you stream your music. I'm on YouTube as an actress and a rapper, and I guess there's a little bit of burlesque on there too now. YouTube is.
I believe in you. We'll find it. We'll edit it in post. We'll find it. That's what Google's for.
Right. If you type it in, you'll find it. And then I'm also on Facebook as Mickey Ferrick and Mickey Ferrick Official on Instagram. So.
And Mickey May, how do you spell that on Spotify? I'm searching you now.
No, that I rap as Young May. YUNGMAE. Yeah, Young May House of Teas. Look up that one. That one's my favorite.
And for our listeners, if you have enjoyed what you've heard, be sure to visit the We Burlesque. Become a patron member. Throw us some money. Keep this alive because this adds to our legacy as well as yours. We will see you next week for another installment of WEView.
OG parties, all in the left, bumping uglies, spitting the hood. At Burlesque House, we struck Victoria. House of Tea, Great Hall with gay. Genders, it's all in the look. Striptease, spinning the hook. Strutting moist Victoria, at Burlesque House. Walk on shame, Burley Hall of Fame. That's just the hook, guys.
Woo woo!
The WEView is a creation of the We Burlesque Podcast Network, produced by Victor Devon. For more information or to send mail, go to weburlesquepodcast.com or send it directly to weburlesquepodcast@gmail.com. Find us at We Burlesque at all social media platforms. Oh, and all things that were said by panelists on this show are the views and thoughts of those panelists, which sometimes I agree with, but they weren't prompted or anything, so that's on them. But I love them. Thank you.